Rice. The infamous Harley Quinn.
The DCEU has had an unsettled journey thus far. Several of its films have had difficult productions, critical mauling, and box office failures, and has become something of a critic punching bag. But it isn't all bad news. The opposite is true. The movies are becoming better and better. While the DCEU isn't quite as excellent as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it isn't as bad as it used to be. Over the course of its 8 films, the DCEU has done a lot of things better than the MCU. Of course, the MCU is a clear winner in terms of script, acting, box office performance, comedy, coherence, and general consistency and quality, but it has been exceeded in several other categories by this other, less successful superhero movie universe. Number 1, the outsider hero's fantasy world. Because he's another long-haired, godlike member of royalty from an alternate planet, Aquaman, Jason Momoa,
Are you invoking the combat of the kings? Call it whatever you want. I call it an ass whooping.
is essentially the Justice League's Thor, sort of. Asgard, Thor's homeworld, is in good shape. It looks beautiful and all, but it's ultimately a bit of a letdown. Much like the rest of Thor's solo films, it isn't a tenth as impressive or intricate as Atlantis, the undersea realm from which Aquaman's mother hails and over which Aquaman now reigns. Not only is it visually spectacular, but Aquaman's standalone feature also takes the time to flesh out some of the mythology surrounding the original 7 kingdoms, their variations in look and history, and the situation in which the various factions have found themselves. It's a vibrant, breathing universe that, in my opinion, represents some of the greatest world building in any MCU or DCEU film. Number 2, a more adult vibe. The DCEU films are generally darker and more mature than the MCU films, with Shazam being an exception. Being darker in places than many would think has mostly benefited the franchise. The darker tone has allowed for some extremely strong, substantial themes in the DCEU's better flicks. The MCU didn't have a death sequence as heartbreaking as Steve Trevor's in Wonder Woman until Avengers: Infinity War. Many of the most beloved superhero films in recent years have been more mature, unorthodox interpretations of the genre. It's arguable that MCU should try an R-rated picture soon. Number 3, variety. When it comes to the DCEU, we never know what to expect when a new installment is revealed. So far, all 8 DCEU films have been rather distinct from one another, which is a fantastic thing, since it means the cinematic universe hasn't grown monotonous and isn't expected to do so in the future. Shazam and Birds of Prey, on the other hand, were unlike any other superhero films we've seen recently. Overall, the MCU has done a fantastic job, and most of the films in its lineup are decent, or better in terms of quality, yet they all seem to follow the same formula and have a similar vibe. Number 4, music. In response to music, the DCEU has been consistently excellent. Sure, Suicide Squad overused contemporary music in a startling way, and the Pitbull rendition of Toto's Africa in Aquaman was, to put it simply, dubious, but otherwise, it's been easy sailing in this department. Hans Zimmer's musical soundtrack for Man of Steel was great, and he did an excellent job on Batman vs. Superman as well. Rupert Gregson-Williams composed 2 great musical compositions for Wonder Woman and Aquaman respectively, while Danny Elfman's Justice League soundtrack was also excellent. If you pay attention to that one, you'll see that he's referencing his classic Batman score at moments. Shazam and Birds of Prey both featured excellent soundtracks and accurately portrayed their tales and characters, with Birds of Prey using pop music considerably more effective than Suicide Squad. Number 5, female characters. The MCU features a number of powerful female characters, like Black Widow, Gamora, Shuri, Okoye, Valkyrie, and Peggy Carter. But the DCEU has a much superior lineup. We all admire Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow as the major female hero in both franchises, but she doesn't get nearly as much attention as DC's Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is not just one of the most popular superheroes in recent memory, but she also had a wonderful hero's journey in her own film. Margot Robbie's smart, immensely amusing, and ethically complicated Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey is part of the DCEU. Meanwhile, we must not overlook Lois Lane and Martha Kent, both of whom are far superior to the Christopher Reeve cinematic counterparts. In addition, Shazam and Suicide Squad's Amanda Waller include a variety of strong female characters. Number 6, the female-led films. Captain Marvel is one of the MCU's lesser entries, despite the pre-release criticism. It's not terrible, It's simply average and safe, and the less said about Nick Fury's eye loss, the better. As ought to go beyond saying, the DCEU's Fantastic Wonder Woman blasted it out of the water. The preceding MCU picture to Captain Marvel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, is co-led by a woman, but it is regrettably poorer than Captain Marvel. Number 7. Romances. Romance is one area where the MCU fails miserably. Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, Star-Lord and Gamora, and Peter Parker and MJ are the only 3 relationships in the franchise that have worked. The DCEU is faring much better in this regard. In Man of Steel, Superman and Lois Lane were fairly poor, but in Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, they were considerably better. Harley Quinn and the Joker are the only romance that hasn't worked out so far, and that's only because they haven't been seen together much. Number 8. Visual style. Finally, when it comes to the visual aesthetics, the MCU pales in comparison to the DCEU. The graphics of the DCEU are mostly bloody spectacular. Few of the MCU films are aesthetically stunning, and it's a less fascinating franchise in terms of filmmaking. Suicide Squad was poorly directed, and Shazam appeared to be rather average, but the other 6 films have been fantastic. The MCU is still doing more things right than it's typically given credit for. Number 9. Stronger villains. Apart from a brainwashed Winter Soldier, we have yet to witness a really terrifying MCU villain. Ronan got close, but he was swiftly reduced to a pawn, whereas Zemo was a smart assassin. No villains from the Iron Man or Thor films, which are considered the MCU's cornerstones, stand out, and even Red Skull, Ultron, and Ego seemed disappointing. Though we wait for Thanos to leave his imprint, the DCEU has carved out a treacherous Zod, a maniacal Lex Luthor, and a rampaging Doomsday, building around what happened before, but with Christopher Nolan's Joker and Bane. Suicide Squad came up short, but Wonder Woman upped the ante once more with Dr. Poison and Ares proving to be a lethal combination of intellect and muscle. Number 10. Bigger climaxes. The DCEU favors larger climaxes, whereas the MCU spreads the action throughout the whole film. It's not a horrible concept, but the action sequences in the MCU don't have the kick-ass edge-of-your-seat comic book vibe. Iron Man, Thor, and especially Ant-Man find themselves in mediocre fights. In fact, until the Guardians get sucked into spaceship battles or the Avengers fight each other, there's a lot to look forward to. In fact, until the Guardians get sucked into spaceship battles or the Avengers fight each other, there's not a lot to look forward to. So that's the video, guys. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to share with your friends and hit that bell icon so you can get notified tomorrow when I upload a new video.